Good evening, good evening, good evening, and good afternoon to our viewers. For those who are in the EST space or timing, and good evening to all our friends in Africa and Europe as well. And welcome to Etoile Europe Leadership Conversation. It's such a great joy to be with you once again on this broadcast and on our theme for the month of March, Leadership in Africa. It's been an interesting journey so far. We've got some really wonderful, knowledge sharing that we've had in the last few weeks with Professor Wale Olajide, great orator and philosopher. We've also had a wonderful time with Mr. Akin Oluwadare, doubling up with Professor Wale Olajide. And also, it's myself, my dear great friend, yet again today, bringing you leadership conversation. And please join me to welcome yet again Ambassador Yemi Akeshwaju. Please welcome him yet again to our
Thank
podcast.
you so much, my brother. It's always a joy and a privilege
Thank
to
you.
share this space with you. Thank you so much for our audience who are investing their time with us. So, certainly looking forward to
Fantastic.
a fantastic evening.
So nice to see you again. How was Mothering Sunday yesterday?
Mothering Sunday was fun. The
Fantastic.
Queen had a
Fantastic.
lovely time.
Oh, yeah. Same here.
Oh, oh, absolutely. And if the Queen is
Fantastic.
happy, the home is happy.
Everybody's happy. You're happy. You're happy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Please, as we welcome all our associates network, our friends, and those who are logging in for the first time today as well, please, if you're joining us for the first time, we'd like you to subscribe as well as press the notification bell so that you can get alerts when we come on here like this as well. Please, it's leadership conversation. Leadership conversation. Leadership determines everything, and we want each and every one of us to be part of this. Leadership determines the quality of our lives. It determines the quality of our organizations, of our community, of our nations as well. And so we need to be very careful when we get involved with this particular topic. However, our world has done a great job. Our society has done a great job on our minds to make us believe that once we talk about leadership, it's none of our business. But leadership is not like that. It's not a position. It's not a title. It's you. It's your responsibility. Is who you become. Is that thing that you are. It's not just about what you do, but who you really are. What are you supposed to contribute, to your world? Yeah, and also we have people that are within the leadership positions and responsibilities as well, whether in politics, in government, in business, and things like that. Yes, it's also emanates from who you really are. It also is a product of our purpose, of our passion, of our vision, and things like that. All those things work together to produce the results of leadership. And that is why we shared also that leadership is not a pursuit, rather is a result of the many things that we do as well. Which brings us to the subject of Africa. Etoile really is a place. Africa is a place in Etoile that we focus on, to really engage with the developing nations, and in the context of leadership, especially training the trainers, helping our land to develop, and also without not just looking at Africa, but also the third world is also a mindset that exists also in the first world as well. Welcome. I can see a whole lot of our people joining in already. If you're joining, please join the conversation today. Join the conversation today. We want to hear your comments. We want to see your thoughts, and we've been picking up on some of these thoughts, and that is what has been forming our conversation. Now, last week, we started off with a conversation with Ambassador Yemi. Now, by the way, Ambassador Yemi is a leadership catalyst, is a leadership guru, consultant, is one of our directors on our board in Etoile International Third World Leadership Association. He's an author, he's a speaker. He works in the context of also mentoring young people, in leadership as well. And also, I think before we finish our broadcast today, I'd like to introduce you yet again to some of his wonderful materials that is out there online, which are fantastic, especially the scorecard. Is it a scorecard?
Okay.
Yes, I need to read that once again. I need to go through that again. That's what I do with my books. I don't just read a book and try. No. There are resources that we will refer back to as well. And we're looking at this time at decision making. Once we come into leadership, one of the most important activity of leadership is decision making. And last week we were looking at what is decision making, and Ambassador Yemi was taking us to what I think it just knocked me out by certain statement that led us to today. I knew we are coming back today definitely, and we're very very cautious of all the different changes going on, especially within the context of Africa right now. Taking Nigeria as one of our case study, where a major defining election is ongoing right now. They just chosen a new president, and they're doing the governorship elections and all the legislators and things like that. But he said something, and this goes on in all the African states as well, that our collective decision, is what brings about some of these, people into leadership positions. But one thing we must have at the back of our mind is that this decision that we have made is going to affect a whole lot of other things, because the people that we have brought in leadership positions as well are going to be making some life-changing, destiny-impacting decisions. And did we consider that when we were all collectively making a decision to empower some of I could not sleep that night. And I'm reviewing all the decisions I've made collectively with others in certain areas that I think I'm suffering the impact of. And so I said, no. Ambassador Yemi, it's got to come back to this. And also in some of your organization, wherever you are, as a father, you're making certain decisions right now that has, impact, effect on your family, your wife, your children, and children yet unborn, on our communities, on our nations as well. What you choose to do and not to do has consequence or benefits. And this is where we are today, just to bring us to the context of where we're coming from. Because when we're talking about leadership, leadership is responsibility. Are you ready to respond to the ability that's inside of you? Are you going to use it wisely to impact or to damage? And this is where we are today. There's a collective decision being made right now, and this decision is going to lead to some life-changing things that's going to happen to us. So today, I must say, I'm going to leave you to talk to us just for a few minutes. I just want you to please shed some light, and I've got some questions and some comments from people I'm going to ask questions about from you. But tell us again, shed some light. And we're all going to sit down. Please get a cup of coffee and juice wherever you are. Some people are in the nice sunshine. Get a glass of juice. Some people are driving up. I know some of our people in the Bahamas say they're always driving up at this time to listen to the broadcast as well. So as you join us as well, and those will be watching later as well. So please listen to it. I'm going to say, maybe for the next 5-10 minutes, tell us, what is this decision making? Tell us, shed some light on decision making. How does everybody makes decision every day? You decide to actually get off your bed.
Absolutely.
And that has a benefit. And if you decide not to, it has, consequences.
As outcomes. So, absolutely.
Please, outcomes, please. Okay. All right. Let me be quiet for a few moments. Please talk to us.
Well, thank you so much. That was a very, very good recap, really, of our time together the last time we met. And I'm pleased to sort of launch off from there, because I think one of the things that we did speak into was the fact that the decisions we make are a product of the vision that we have, particularly as a leader.
Yes.
And regrettably, many of the decisions within the African leadership context appear to suggest that those decisions are not born of a true sense of vision, positive vision for the constituents, whether it's for the family, whether it's for the community, whether it's for the region or for the nation. Many of those decisions indicate a certain lack of well thought out strategic decision for the benefit of the people. And that, of course, as you rightly pointed out, has had severe consequences on the history of African development. Now, just as bad as we've had it in the past, unfortunately, we do have in some context a continuum of those kind of poor quality decision making. Now, having said that, I'm pleased that there are at least some moves that are being made in some quarters in Africa to shed the old snake skin, as it were, of poor decision making, and step into new dimensions of effective thinking.
That's
Because
right.
I think one
Yes.
of the things that we would say also is the fact that our decisions are also a product of our values.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And unfortunately, many of the leaders have embraced values that are not particularly healthy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it always reflects, you see, the thing about politics
Hmm.
is that, you should never really depend on what a politician says to you during campaigning. You know?
Okay, okay. Let me interrupt you there. Like Dr. Miles will say, a politician is not by default
Yeah,
a leader. A
yeah,
politician is his whole agenda is how to win the next election,
absolutely.
and that is what it's all about.
Absolutely.
However, really, what this is why I tell politicians, you will have to translate from a political mindset into a leadership mindset
The
for you
leadership
to
mindset.
function. You
Absolutely.
can't function as a politician. You campaign as a politician,
Yeah,
then you got to now go function as a leader. However, that is
absolutely.
where they get stuck.
That's indeed where they get stuck. You're so
Mm.
correct. And so you find out that many of our leaders, I think, when I talk about their values, I mean,
Mm.
they're both spiritual values, they're moral values, there are
Oh,
ethical
yeah.
values. There's a whole context of values. There are ancient African values that speak to who we are as a people, which unfortunately are being trodden on in the quest to satisfy Western ideologies, as
Ideologies.
it
That's
were,
right.
or
Mm.
even Asian ideologies as those
Mm.
nations begin to emerge,
Yeah,
in this multipolar world that we're living in. But I
that's right.
think as a people, Africa needs to go back to our roots. Because
Yes.
sometimes when I sit down and I read some of our ancient African proverbs, you think about
Yes.
how deep and profound they are,
Oh, yes, that's
you know,
true.
and they're laden with tremendous insight that if
Mm.
we embrace
Mm.
the values that are propounded in many of those proverbs and insights of our forefathers, and we allow them to inform many of the decisions that we make, Africa will certainly be the better for it.
I'm
And
telling
so
you.
I think there
Telling you.
certainly needs to be a return to those ancient values,
Mm.
in Africa, that speak to community,
That's
that
right.
speak to looking at the welfare. I
Mm.
remember when I was growing up, one of the things we always said was, it takes a community to raise a child.
To raise a child, you're very correct. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that is a profound thought because it means that we all take responsibility for the well-being of every child that we meet.
That's
It's
true.
not a question of every man for himself, God for us all. Okay.
You,
And
you
then
know, you know, I must say, let me interrupt you. Somebody said something on the news today or online somewhere. It was the news online, and said our curriculum, our education curriculum in Africa is based on a foreign curriculum. They literally imported and brought it there. Now, that curriculum is about changing based on values, based on some other crazy things. Now, I wonder how that is going to affect us, how we, if we're going to inject that. I'm just literally,
you're
picking
right.
on what you're saying.
You're
You know,
absolutely right. Because the
mm,
truth of the matter is this: when you look at the West, and we celebrate some of the great things that the West has brought into Africa in terms of development and things like that. But the truth of the matter is that there are values that they're embracing in the West that are foreign to the African way of thinking.
yes, that's true.
And I think Africa has to be strong enough as a people to say, listen, these are values that are anathema to us in Africa. And we have our own set of values, and we have the courage of our own convictions to
That's
stand by our own values. And it is those values that inform the decisions and the choices that our leaders make for
right.
developing our nations.
Thank you, sir.
You see? And I think that's something that we need to embrace, not just at national levels, but at our state levels, at our regional levels, at our community levels. And say,
Mm,
yes, we look at what's happening in other continents, we look at what's happening in other parts of the world, and we look at the things that are positive that we can learn from, but we also look at the things that we're happy to discard because they will not serve us effectively within our context. You know, So I think Africa really needs to come to a renaissance of our own thinking, our own paradigms,
Yes.
that says, okay, as Africa, okay, what are the decisions and the choices that we're making for today that will serve us for the future? And that brings us to talking about generational thinking.
Wow.
As you were saying earlier,
Yes.
Many politicians, they emerge into positions of leadership through political campaigning, through the political process. But once they get into position, they need to also transition from a politician's mindset into a leadership mindset. And one of the fundamentals of effective leadership is generational thinking. And generational thinking informs the decisions that you make.
Just makes sense.
Absolutely. Wow. It absolutely informs the decisions that you make. And so African leaders, when you look at some of the decisions that they make, I mean, one of the things that I've been sort of studying over the last few weeks is the area of environmental issues. And what's happening certainly in the Western world, where they're talking about sustainable development and things around, setting aside energy generation from some of the fossil fuels and transitioning into renewable energies. Now, while some of those ideas are laudable, the truth of the matter is that Africa as a continent needs a quantum leap in our energy generation processes, energy generation technologies, to be able to even think about what they're offering us right now under those developmental goals.
That's right. I absolutely agree with you.
Exactly. Yes. Many parts in Africa where they can't, they're struggling to make ends meet.
Yes.
Now you're telling them that in the village, in the rural parts of Africa, they shouldn't burn firewood so they can feed their families. That's not gonna fly. And so our leaders need to.
These things are being imposed on us. Yes.
Absolutely. So our leaders need to think about our own context.
That's right.
And say, okay, within our context, what decisions make sense for us as a people?
True.
And that comes from generational thinking and say, okay, we hear what it is you want to do within the context of the global economy, but we're also thinking about the future of our children 10, 15, 25, 30 years, 50 years from now.
That's true.
You can't talk about a future of 30 years from now if the children of today can't survive because we have poor health conditions, because we have poor sanitation conditions, because we have poor electricity consideration. So the context of our decision making, should involve not just, going with whatever international bodies say, but looking at how those fit within our own paradigm. Okay. And I say that with the sense that these are decisions that need to be made, not just at a national level, but individually in our different homes, because we're all making choices, like you said earlier. We're all making decisions.
Listen, let me read something from Josephine, Ambassador Josephine Bakis from Trinidad to you. That's one of our board and trustees. Africa and other third world countries must decide and reconfirm their values and high moral standards in order to withstand the modern neo-colonialistic views and not be overruled by them. Josephine Bakis.
Absolutely agree.
Yes.
Absolutely agree.
Thank you so much.
That's a wonderful contribution from Ambassador Josephine. So Africa, and I guess in a way, Asian nations are rising to this situation. Latin America, I guess. In fact, when you look at some of the decisions and discussions that are being had right now in the Russia-Africa summit, okay, I think Russia's President Vladimir Putin made a very interesting comment. he said, Africa, right now, pretty much will become a major force in this multipolar world that we're entering. Now, I listened to that, but I had to ask myself, how many African leaders are prepared for the responsibility that this will impose on us as we step into this new dimension of leadership, not just within our region, not just within our continent, but within the global context.
Now, let me pause there and spin this around a little bit. And this is one of the things whereby this African leadership needs now to begin to have a good reflection. Okay, and I'm gonna get you to help them. Okay, now if we look in the context of within the developing nations, let us just give a pictorial view to all our associates and all our audience tonight. Just examples of let's start with it's always good to start with the bad news. Okay. So we can have a comfort landing afterwards. So give us a view, evidences of bad leadership decisions and evidence of them all around us, from north to south to west to East Africa and developing nations around the continent. Give us a pictorial view. Just bullet points or clips of them.
The beauty of it is this, and I would encourage our listeners to go to a website. It's IIAG. That's Ibrahim Index of African Governance.
Wow.
I found I've consistently found it a very, very useful website to at least give you a flavor of what's happening as far as governance and leadership is taking place within the African context, because they look at different components of what's happening in Africa, from political governance to social development to human capital development to safety and security, and all of these elements that make for effective leadership really within our continent. And from there you can begin to get a sense of what nations are making strides to improve and what nations are sort of going in reverse. And when you look at that website and when you read some of the comments and some of the information in some of the reports, you get a sense that there is a general desire to improve, particularly amongst the young people, the youth of Africa.
Yes.
There is a drive.
That's a drive right now.
Absolutely. To improve governance and the outcomes of governance on the continent.
Yes.
But of course, the challenge is that if you haven't learned how to be an effective leader, oftentimes when people get into positions of leadership, they mirror the poor leadership traits, they mirror the poor leadership lessons that they have learned in the past. And so it behoves people like you and I and other people in this space to engage our young people, engage our leaders actively and say, look, we need to be setting new, vibrant, robust examples of effective leadership and governance.
Leadership. That's right.
See? So, examples of bad leadership. I mean,
examples of bad decision making in leadership.
Bad decision making.
Yes.
I mean, you look at the nation, one of the newest nations on the planet, South Sudan.
Whoa,
They emerged from, they broke away from Sudan with great hopes, high aspirations, tremendous resources, had oil available for a nation that was, the size that it was, the oil deposits that they had enough resources for that nation to launch out to become one of the most prosperous per capita nations on the planet.
What did they do?
They allowed interpersonal conflict between the leaders of the vice president and the president, who could not come to a matured reconciliation of their individual differences to turn that nation into a complete basket case. Okay? So much potential, so much possibilities, and yet because of poor leadership. Now, I dare say, like we said earlier, if these leaders thought beyond themselves, thought beyond their own political gamesmanship to think about the future of the children and the children yet unborn in their nation, the decisions they would make would have been completely different.
Let's go south. Let's go south. Southern Africa.
Oh,
Give us,
wow. What can we say?
show us
South
something.
Africa right now is in turmoil. Okay? It's in turmoil because, again, some of the decisions that the leaders have made. Okay? One of the things with South Africa that I find quite fascinating is the contrast between the great leadership statesman, Nelson Mandela, and the current crop of leaders that they have. Nelson Mandela was a man who came out, who had every right to be bitter, who had every right to want to take revenge against people who had kept him in prison for 27 years. He was a man who came into leadership with a preponderance of support from his entire nation. And rather than choose the pathway of vengeance and destruction upon the people who had done him ill in the past, he chose a different path of truth and reconciliation. Rather than setting his nation on fire, through wanting to pursue personal vendetta.
Thank you.
He was a man who thought as a leader for the benefit of his nation, and those decisions informed setting up truth and reconciliation.
Informed decision.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And it informed setting up a new cadre of leadership that looks to the future than to the past.
Just what you said, vision.
Absolutely.
He had a vision for the land, and that informed this. My God.
And that is a lesson that I think many of our leaders in Africa are yet to learn or embrace.
I must hear me quickly because of our time. Let's go to the West.
To the West. Look at Ghana.
Yes.
Wonderful nation, again, tremendous possibilities, tremendous opportunities. When you look at what's happening in Ghana now, it's a sorry case. Okay? Look at what happened in Nigeria. Over the last few weeks, just before the elections, they had this cash redesign policy. You have to ask yourself, who on earth came up with such a decision at such a pivotal, sensitive time in the political calendar of the nation? There's just no way you can think about how that decision was made. That you have to ask yourself, whoever made that decision was not thinking generationally. Because to all intents and purposes, it could have set the nation on fire.
That's true.
Because in the past, political campaigning areas, election season is often a time of tremendous political tension. Why fan the flames of such tension with such a poor decision? It just beggars belief. And yet that was the decision that was made.
There's just a catalog of all this kind of decisions all over, from north to east to west to south, all over Africa. And it's like the place is just going up in rubbles, in chaos and crisis continually. But there must be some good decisions that have been made somewhere along the line. Maybe just find us one. Find us one to take home. And maybe we can use that as an example, as a role model.
The beauty of it is that when you look at the Nigerian context as an example, the recent elections, again, lends themselves to at least some expression of hope for the future. Because you find out that, yes, the young people were motivated to go out and make their voice heard.
That's true.
So individually and collectively, they made a decision to say, okay, we're no longer willing to settle for what we had in the past. We're willing to make a statement with even getting a third party in the fray of our political equation. Okay, so that is a decision that I think bodes well for the future. Okay, now, of course, the fact that many of our political leaders are choosing to air their grievances, instead of resorting to violence, making a decision to say, okay, we will actually go through proper electoral grievance procedures using the judiciary, is a wise decision. And we have to salute that, because the alternative in a nation of 200 million people doesn't even bear thinking about.
Protest all over the place.
Absolutely.
That would
Okay.
have been chaos.
So I think that's something positive. I was reading recently about a lady, the president of Tanzania.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
I mean, she's been making some, phenomenal changes to her nation, right from the empowerment of women, okay, right from the choices she's making about. Recently, she lifted the ban on political rallies, therefore allowing even her political opponents to have a voice to speak to the people. And for me, that smells of somebody who understands what leadership is about. It's about being willing to contest in the marketplace of ideas. Share your vision, share your policies, let the people hear what you have to say. May the best ideas win. That is what leadership is about.
Okay, we're running out of time totally right now, Ambassador Yemi. But in 1 minute, give us something. How can we change this narrative? What can help? What can we throw there? At least one pointer that we can begin to use.
One of the simple things I would say is that we ask and we encourage leaders at all levels, young people, medium level leaders, national leaders, to have a simple framework for our decisions. There's a framework that we use it in business a lot, but it's applicable in every context.
Yes.
5 W's and an H, and the 5 W's and an H, it says what, where, who, when, where, and how. But every decision that you make, subjected to this, very simple 6 contexts.
Subjected to
when you make a decision, who is affected by this decision? Okay, who benefits from it? Is it just me personally, or is it the constituents who benefit from it? Okay. When do they benefit from it? There are some people, there's some nations that are going into contracts with international organizations where the benefit that accrues to the multinational starts right now. And the people only start to benefit 25 years from now. You have to ask yourself, what sort of a decision is that?
Is this?
Okay? Exactly. And then you have to ask the question, why? Why are we making this decision? Okay. Are we thinking about the values that underpin this decision? Does this decision demonstrate that we have a good vision for our people? Why are we making the decision? And then how? How do we implement this in such a way that it will not be deleterious to the well-being of our people? And if it is likely that it's going to cause some pressure on the people, do we have the vision to be able to communicate effectively with our people to say, look, there may be some pain in the short term, but this is the roadmap to the prosperity that we have for the future. And you walk the constituents through this roadmap and you lead them through it. One of the challenges we have in a lot of our African contexts is that we make decisions and we say, oh, we're all in it together. But the elites are enjoying abundance and prosperity, whilst the masses are suffering.
Which is like who is it for? Why?
Exactly.
Is it just for the few? Where? Absolutely. And how are we going to do this? Wow.
And so that simple framework, I think if everybody, at different levels, if you're a school principal, if you apply this to the decisions you want to make affecting the students in your school, if you're a business owner, if you apply that framework to the decisions you want to make about your business, if you're making a decision, how does this affect my staff? How does this affect the community in which my business operates? Okay. So you find out that it brings you to more strategic thinking, more holistic thinking about the decisions that we make as leaders. As a parent, I make decisions. I make decisions that affect myself, that affects my children, that affects my spouse, that affects other people who I have the privilege of influencing. So I have to ask myself those, 6 questions.
Right now, I want to buy a brand new Range Rover, but I'm thinking about my daughter, my son, thinking the roof over our head. I'm thinking I'll just stick with my old banger, and we have a comfortable home. Wow. Thank you so much. We're out of time. Not that we're out of questions, though, but we're out of time on this very broadcast. And thank you. And I think this is something to take back home. to use this framework to actually help our decision making. You know, the 4 W's or 5 and the H. Who are you making for? Why are you making it? When are you making it? Where are you making? Yes, and how? How are you going to deliver this? You know, and I think if we begin to think like this, you know, very strategic, we begin to comfort with very good decision. Just Ambassador Bakis, I just said it as well, like you said, that our leaders are not thinking visionary when they're making decisions, and this is very, very fundamental to decision making. This is Etwala Europe Leadership Conversation. It's been a wonderful, fantastic, and great honor to be with you once again. This is courtesy of Etwala, ITWLA. Please check out what is ITWLA. This is exactly who we are. Listen to this.
Hi, my name is Miles Monroe Jr., and I'm the chairman of the board for the International Third World Leaders Association. Our organization was birthed to respond to and address the critical need for quality, effective leadership development and training in the emerging developing nations.
Our vision is to establish a global network of leaders from every discipline,
committed to the highest standards of excellence in leadership training, personal development,
mutual accountability, and fraternal support, implementing relevant and innovative leadership philosophy based on time-tested precepts, principles, and values.
Our mission is to influence the destiny of developing third world nations through leadership training,
personal development, supportive relationships, and global networking.
Our purpose is to provide transformational solutions
in response to the dynamic leadership needs of the emerging third world developing nations.
Our goal is to cultivate leadership commitment
to produce leaders
dedicated to the empowerment of their people,
the progressive well-being of their citizens,
and the betterment of their nation.
The strategic approach captured in the slogan coined by our founder, Dr. Miles Monroe,
was transforming followers into leaders and leaders into agents of change. Our focus is national development through transformational leadership,
transforming nations, communities from the inside out.
Join us in ushering in this new era of our organization.
We are tasked with carrying this vision forward,
and we are devoted to ensuring that we leave an unwavering legacy.
The organization that produces effective leaders